All right, how's it going out there? Name is Brandy Jackson. For those that don't know me or haven't seen me out and about or social media or any other webinars or anything, I am based here in Greenville, South Carolina, and born and raised in this area. I played college golf at Furman University back in the day, 20-ish years ago, maybe. I guess it's actually 20 years ago that I graduated, 2003. But played golf there, went on to play professionally for about 8 years after that between LPGA Tour and the Symetra Tour, Epson Tour. It's changed names several times, but did that for about 8 years and have been in this recruiting industry for 12-ish years now, maybe 13. Started my own business in 2011. So this coming year is 12 years that I've had Brandy Jackson Golf, just working with initially all junior golfers for the last 5 or 6 years. It's been just the females, which I love, just helping them through the process and the bigger picture of what that means with player development and professional skills of what this webinar is about, which is how to have better coach communications and how to talk better and present yourself better. That's just a byproduct of the recruiting process, which I do know a lot of people have some initial already preconceived ideas of the recruiting process, and even people like myself who are in this industry from a recruiting perspective. But there's so much to learn and gain from it, and so much that you can take away from it if you really will put the time into it and work on things. It's going to help you better prepare for college golf and college life, and what that looks like, and how much of a transition that's going to be. And then obviously for years beyond that, when you get into a job and a career and, having a family and needing to know how to communicate. So this webinar is really about improving those coach communications. I've been working with the Peggy Kirk Bell Girls Tour, been a partner with them for out of the 12 years I've had my business. It's been about 10 years that I have been the recruiting consultant for the PKB, and always enjoy getting to do these webinars and give you all some information that hopefully you can take away and implement into your process. You can also always reach out to me. Part of the partnership with the Peggy Kirk Bell Girls Tour is the national members all have a free initial 30-minute intro to recruiting call with me, where we'll talk a little bit about the initial steps of the process and is it time for you to start the process. And if you do want help, that's what I'm here for as well. So make sure you reach out, and my email's on the site. You can find me, brandyjacksongolf.com. You can go through all the recruit PKB on the Peggy Kirk Bell site. Not hard to find. I don't have all of my PowerPoint screen. I just wanted to hop on here and just kind of actually chat face to face. I think that helps even understand a little bit better of what it's like to be on video and chat and those things. So don't have a PowerPoint with my email and all that, but feel free to reach out. I'm not hard to find. So let's dive into this. There's really three key kind of aspects of the process that have that coach communication piece that I see a lot of young girls struggle with. Three kind of different. We've got email, writing, text. Then you have the virtual or the phone calls. Video chats are definitely a lot more popular now. And then you've got the actual in-person, whether it's visits or maybe you see a coach, you go to a tournament and you see a coach or a camp or something like that. So you've got kind of three different categories of what that communication piece looks like. So just going to give you a few tips on each of those areas and how to just do a little bit better, and some of the things the coaches look for, and some of the things that they turn-offs and things that they like to see, things they don't like to see, and just ways to connect better. That is what this process is a lot about, is that connection piece. It's something that I know a lot of kids struggle with a little bit more than, I actually struggled with it, and I don't have the technology excuse. I don't have the, everybody is on a screen, text message. I don't have that excuse. You did have to actually talk to people and speak to people, but I really struggled with it as a teenager, in college, and even out on tour, really bad. That's why I love doing what I do, and having to learn how to public speak and do these things is just, you just throw yourself out there, you get used to it, you get better. And that's how you learn to make connections with people. And that's how you get, you get the offers. I hate to kind of say it that way, but that definitely helps do that. So first one is emails. So those intro emails that you're going to send out, some of those follow-up emails, or the back and forth communication that you might have through coaches. A lot of it's going to start with emails, maybe text messages, maybe even through Instagram or something. It's a kind of a weird line there of formality with that, especially initially. You want it to be very well written and professional. You as the student, you as the athlete, you as the young lady must write these emails. Do not have your parents write these. Parents do not write these. That is one of the first things that throws a coach off, is if they can tell it's written by a parent, or especially if it's written in the tense of a parent in terms of, hey, my daughter, this and that. Absolutely do not do that, please. But by all means, read over your daughter's emails, take a look at them, make sure that there's no major mistakes. I mean, they don't have to be perfect. They are still young, especially if maybe you're doing this, even as early as 8th or 9th grade, maybe. Coaches understand. But at the same time, if you're reaching out to a really high academic school and you can't draft up an email that's pretty good grammar and etiquette, then they're going to have a really hard time thinking that, academic wise, you're going to be able to cut it at that school when, that standard is so high. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be well written. It needs to have the right information, needs to be honest. One of the things coaches hate to see is if you say your scoring average is X number and they go look at your results and there's like, that doesn't even make sense. So it needs to be honest. It needs to be inclusive of several different things about you. You could have a little bit of character, there's even some ways if you do have some color about you, character, humor, you can implement that as long as it comes out right. I've had some coaches say they like sometimes if it comes across as as your true personality. So you just want to make sure that's done right and it comes across right and it can't be misunderstood. So we get emails, professional, well written, good grammar. If it's time where you're past that June 15th date prior to your junior year, when coaches are allowed to respond back to you, go ahead and maybe ask a question or something that gives them a reason to respond back. Again, if you just kind of throw some stuff out there and it's just very surface, it's like, okay, great, thanks for the update. Doesn't mean they're always going to answer. Doesn't mean that if they're not interested in you that they're going to answer just because you ask a question. But a lot of times if you do, it allows ongoing communication to happen. There's a lot to talk about within emails and the communication piece, but just as far as an etiquette kind of thing, professional, well written, be honest. You can show a little bit of personality and humor in there if it fits right, and just make it about you and make it reflect you. And like I said, make sure you don't write it and type it like a text message. Use the right grammar, capitalization. Don't have a bunch of run-on sentences. Make sure it's blocked off into paragraphs. Nobody likes to see one big, huge paragraph, especially if the spacing's not very good. It is just hard to read. It's hard on the eyes. So make sure it's into 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs, easier to read. Again, good grammar, capitalization, double check your spelling. And you just want to make sure it flows, and make sure you address the coach and, properly in terms of like, dear coach, whoever or whatever that might be. So a few things there on email etiquette and improving that communication through initial emails. Text messages and Instagram and stuff becomes a little less formal, but still be aware of how you're communicating through that and how you're using verbiage and notes and that kind of stuff. All right, let's move on a little bit about more phone calls and or virtual chats like this. Both are very similar, but yet obviously a few things you've got to be aware of. No matter what, make sure you're always somewhere that's quiet. I know obviously if a coach were to call you and you're not expecting that, that's why you always want to try to. It's why cold calls these days just in this industry are really not as recommended. I'm not a big fan of them. I know me personally, I hate being cold called because I hate when if I don't know what the call is about, or I don't know, I'm busy, I get anxiety about it. And it's just like, well, I need to call back or I need to answer. But yet I don't know why, and I'm not where I need to be. So you ideally want to always try to set up an actual time and make sure you're somewhere that's quiet and you've got good service. I know I've got a couple of players whose service within their house is not very good. It is something, I know you can only do so much to control that, but definitely let the coach maybe know ahead of time, because it is extremely frustrating. Most everybody understands technology is, it's our best friend, but at the same time, it could be our worst enemy in lots of ways. But they do know that if that happens, but if it does, it's hard to have a genuine conversation and to have things going. So try to make sure you're somewhere that does have good service and you don't have that issue. If you know prior, you know you've got a call and you can maybe try to find somewhere else. So do that. It's one thing if it happens, you can't do anything about it. Just try to let the coach know that ahead of time so that they're prepared. Make sure you're somewhere that's quiet if it's going to be either phone call or video chat. If you are on actual video chat, try to be aware of what's behind you. You don't really think about it until you get on there, but think about, what's behind you, what you got going on. If you're in your bedroom and maybe you don't have your bedroom behind you, just be a complete mess, a very small thing there. But make sure when you're on there, you've got good eye contact. You've got good posture. I know I talk a lot with my hands, but try not to be too fidgety or, just slumping down. You really want good posture, be attentive. This goes all the way into in-person calls as well, or in-person communication and conversations as well. But you always want good posture and don't be sitting on a bed with your computer propped up in front of you. If this is the first time you're trying to talk to a coach, try to be somewhere, good posture, good eye contact, shoulders back, smile. All of those go a long way. How you first present yourself like that and how enthusiastic you look and excited and confident you look when you sit there and talk to them. I mean, you can't put money on that first impression with that. So make sure you do. If it's just a phone call, I mean, still do these things, because even through the phone, if you're just kind of laying back or, again, doing something that's just kind of nonchalant, you might not really give off that vibe, even through a phone call. So again, keep that in mind. Be polite, good manners. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Thank you. Where, obviously I'm from here in the South, you hear a lot of yes, ma'ams. I get a lot of ma'ams, and some people don't love being called ma'am sometimes, but you usually can't go wrong by saying yes, ma'am. And if they say, you don't have to call me ma'am, but good manners, thank you, you're welcome. Extremely grateful for the chance that you have to talk to them. Just make sure very polite, good manners. Again, just keeping in mind how important that impression is. Make sure you're prepared to. Again, that goes down a whole other rabbit hole of questions to ask and questions you may ask, or questions you may get asked. And we have done a webinar, written articles. A lot of what I work with my girls on is questions you may get asked, and going ahead and thinking ahead to what might those answers be, and what questions you need to ask the coach. Those are very specific to the timing of the process and the relationship you've already had with the coach, or is this an initial call? But the more prepared you are with those questions, with some highlights about the coach and the teams and things that you can reference. I mean, I sit here and do my calls with a little note on some things, so that if I get stuck, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the other thing I want to talk about. And then thankfully I can kind of run with it. But I sit here as well. I don't just completely, even though I could probably do this just completely off the top of my head. Like I said, I sit here with my little bullet points, and if I'm doing a webinar, or if I'm doing a podcast with a coach, I know the questions that I want to ask that coach. I've already done some homework on them. I can lead the conversation by knowing, hey, yeah, I saw that your team did this. That's where conversation comes from. So be prepared, know your audience, know who you're talking to and who you're talking with. And then the last part of it, which obviously I would say is the most important part, but if the phone calls and the emails don't go well, you won't ever actually get to the visit part. So all of them go hand in hand. But obviously then if you are there and you're in front of a coach, visits are going to be a little different environment than what a camp would be, but both of them are great times to make a good impression. Same thing as far as like when you sit down and talk to the coach, good posture. This is where you do really the handshake and the smile and the eye contact really goes a long way. Practice these things. I had all of my girls do it last year, or the end of the year. One of their assignments was learning how to handshake, and they all had to go to 5 people and shake hands and then ask, hey, how did I do? How was my grip pressure? How was my smile? How was my eye contact? And they all learned a little bit about it. Actually, probably going to have them do it again sometime soon. You can never not learn how to handshake well. And so taking that initiative, that first handshake, that first impression, shows some confidence, just shows, just starts the conversation, starts the meeting off well. So practice handshakes and greeting people and meeting people and smiling and good eye contact. It's a huge thing. Cannot say it enough. I say this because I know how bad I used to be at it. And sometimes I still have this awkward. I'm not a big hugger as much as I like to be, very warm and friendly and all that stuff. Everybody gives me a hard time on this awkward hugger about stuff. So I am that person that gets caught between the handshake and the hug. And it used to happen, after rounds. And now your post round handshakes, a lot of times, those are so nonchalant. Those are just so, when you shake the hands of your competitors or whatever, maybe kind of pat them on the back. That's not true handshake. That's just more formality. True handshake is greeting somebody and meeting somebody and making that impression. But I was always that one that got that caught that, awkward in between, where you go to hug and they're going to handshake or vice versa. But in most of these cases like this with a coach, obviously you're probably at a more formal level where you're only going to be shaking their hand. So just plan for that. Again, that type of handshake you don't want to just take lightly. Make an impression. Practice just talking and speaking. I had one of my girls that actually has been going to a Toastmasters thing, and she says it's been a huge help. I work with the girls a lot on this as well. Obviously, I don't get to do a lot in person with them, but we do talk about different things. We talk about different talking points and how to talk and those kinds of things. So just practice it. Make yourself get in front of people and have to talk. Ask questions in class. I say this because I was so bad about these things, and it is something that the older you get, you've got to be willing to talk and speak up and be comfortable doing it. You can't really get through successfully in this world without, even if you're not a public speaker or your job isn't 100% centered around talking in front of people, you've got to have these skills, and they're so important. So just start working on them. Again, be prepared when you go in, know the person, know the coach, know the assistant coach, know things, and just be excited that you're there. Because again, the more nervous you are, even if you are excited to be there, if the nerves take over so much and you're just not comfortable, it's just going to be a tough vibe there. So again, it always helps too if you can maybe go somewhere locally, even if it's a college that you don't just love. No, you don't want to waste any coach's time, but most coaches, when you're in and around the area and they may know, that you maybe won't come there, a lot of coaches are still willing to have a conversation. They see the bigger picture as well. And they know, hey, if all else fails, you may want to come back home and come to school there and play for them. So sometimes trying to get some visits somewhere that's not as, high stakes will help a little bit too. But again, be enthusiastic, have a conversation, have some personality. Don't try not to have it be just so like, here's a question. Okay, coach, I'm going to answer it. Or the more formal it is, they like you to be prepared and they like for you to know your stuff and have great answers, but it needs to be comfortable and relaxed. And definitely coach personalities are going to vary among that. Some are not going to have, not going to be as fun or laid back. Some are going to be very rigid themselves. And so, of course, if, you kind of got to go off of their vibe, but at the same time, that's where the whole fit piece of things comes. And the more comfortable you can be being who you are, the better the chance is that you're going to get the right fit there, and it's going to mesh, and it's going to be a good relationship. And it's not going to be based on the fact that you were so nervous you didn't talk or you didn't represent yourself in the way you really probably are going to be when you get to campus. So again, just be engaging, conversation, interested in what they're talking about. Really make sure you listen as they talk to you. Don't just kind of ask the question and be ready to start asking your next question. Really listen to what they say. It's okay if you even have to kind of pause for a second and think about what they said. That might actually trigger a totally different question than you plan to ask. And that's how conversations happen. That's how relationships get built. And that improvement of coach communications is such a big thing. Again, that's where, yes, we talk about scores. And yes, of course, coaches, for the most part, when they look at recruits, it starts with scores and what's that range? Where are you at? Are you in a range that fits what they need to see? And then it's all these intangible things, and you may be great at it, but maybe again, the personality just didn't match. So many of these variables are the reasons for girls getting, looked at by coaches and other girls not. And again, it's not always your fault. You could be great and great interview skills, and it just still doesn't quite fit what that coach wants. And that's okay. Keep working at it. And keep, just trying to get better so that you make sure who you are and how you represent yourself through your communication. I said, reflects who you are and what you're looking for. So hopefully this gives some good insight. Like I said, I didn't get on this one with a whole PowerPoint. I do those sometimes. I like going through that, but I actually feel better when I sit here and kind of talk and chat and can use my hands. And so just saw this one was a really good one, since this is about communication, and maybe you can even kind of see, I'm not the best, but I have definitely learned how to how to sit on video calls, how to speak in front of people and try to, and I've still got a lot to learn. I'm constantly learning and watching people who do speaking stuff and seeing how they do and how they talk, and always trying to get better myself. So it's something you've got to be able to do as you go through this process as well. So hopefully some good insight, some good tips. Again, if you need anything, reach out. My email is my business email is at Brandi, Brandi at brandyjacksongolf.com. You can go to brandyjacksongolf.com. You can also find me through the Peggy Kirk Bell site. Be out on site some this spring. You'll see my new assistant as well. Once she gets going, she's going to be out on site as well. So if you need anything, want to connect, just reach out. Happy to do that. But till then, take care and keep working on that coach communication.